I just took the FAA written exam for my private pilot license and I passed. So I want to give you some feedback on what I experienced and kind of some of the tips and tricks that I thought were helpful as I took that exam. We did another video on how I prepared for that, and I feel like I went into it pretty prepared. I was ready to take the test. I was excited, all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to give you some feedback on what I think would be helpful for somebody going into that exam themselves. So here's 6 tips. The number 1 tip that I have for you is when you go into the testing center, when you sit down, read each one of the questions very carefully. Now, one of the things that I struggled with, maybe you guys have struggled with it too, is I would read the question and my mind would start jumping to conclusions about what they were trying to ask me, and automatically my eyes would start going down to some of the possible answers. And I think that I had to really slow myself down and say, hey, I'm not gonna jump to any conclusions. I'm actually really gonna read each question. Sometimes I would read the question twice before I would even look at the answers. And that helped me to not jump to a silly conclusion or miss something inside the question. So be sure to read those things carefully, maybe even try and not bias yourself towards jumping down to the answers. The number 2 tip that I have for you, I didn't realize this, but you can actually go down and you can bookmark a question and say, you know what, I'm gonna come back to this. Now, in saying that, I bookmarked several questions so that I could come back to them later, but I always answered the question with what I thought was the correct answer, and then I bookmarked it. I felt like that was super helpful for me, and in one case, actually, they gave an answer kind of to one of the questions in one of the later questions. So that was super helpful for me, bookmarking those questions that I didn't feel really confident in, but I always answered them first. The number 3 tip that I have for you is take your time. There's plenty of time. Even though they've changed the requirements, kind of the structure of the test, and they're providing a little bit less time, I would still tell you, take your time. Don't rush through it. I finished with plenty of time, and that was with me going back and double and triple checking some of my questions. So really take your time, make sure you understand what they're talking about, make sure that you're looking at all the diagrams and everything that they give you carefully, and don't feel like you're in a rush. You've got plenty of time to take that exam. The 4th tip is eat something before you go. Now, this sounds a little silly, but there's a ton of data out there that supports eating something before you go in to take a test, right? Making sure that your mind's got some fuel. Even if it's just a little bit of a snack right before you go in, I think that's something that helped me to have a little bit more energy. For me, my mind started to get a little bit tired as I was thinking through these things, doing the calculations, etc. And I appreciated the fact that I ate something a little bit before I went. The number 5 tip I've got is take practice tests. Because this was my first FAA exam, I really didn't know exactly what to anticipate. And so going through some of the online resources and even some of the ground school resources that are out there and taking some of the practice exams, it helped me to be aware of how questions were going to be asked and what pieces of information I ought to be looking for inside of the questions and answers. For me, I didn't want to go and take the actual exam until I was consistently in the 90s as far as the percentage that I was getting correct on these practice exams. Good heavens. And so that's one tip I've got for you. If you're feeling kind of nervous or anxious, make sure to take those practice tests and get acquainted with it. The last tip I've got for you, number 6 here, is make flashcards. So I made flashcards out of the test questions that I missed on the practice test, and then I would review those on a regular basis. I felt like that was helpful because I wasn't wasting time looking at concepts that I was super familiar with, like the forces of flight or whatever, control surfaces, some of the really basic stuff. I wanted to make sure that I was going through things that I thought were difficult, like memorizing all the regulations and all that stuff. Thanks for watching this episode of Pilot Pursuit. I would love to hear your feedback on surprises that you had when you were taking the exam, as well as anything that you did to prepare for it. Now, this won't be the last time I take an FAA exam. I plan on becoming, getting my instrument rating and going on and getting my commercial pilot license. So I'm going to be taking more of these tests. What were some of the things that you did that helped you prepare? And what were some of the surprises that you had as you got out of the testing center there? In the next episode, I will be taking my check ride. I'll be meeting with the DPE here in a couple of weeks, and we'll actually take that check ride. I'm a little nervous about it, as everybody I think is. At the same time, I feel really prepared. But what I would say is, please check in with us for that next video. That's my hope, is that I go from being a student pilot to a full-fledged pilot and hold up that certification. So Check with us next time. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the little bell icon so that you're notified when that new video pops up. But until then, cross your fingers for me. We'll see you on the next video.